Please sit. What do you want?
If you're a parent, this is a pretty familiar scene. On weeknights, dinner for the kids usually falls on Billy Velhagen. He's the patient one, the softie. And he goes by Papa, because in this family, Daddy is already taken.
We had our first date January 3rd, 1998. So we sort of knew on the first date when we were both talking about having children and wanting to have children that maybe this is, this is a potential here.
In the battle for gay rights, marriage is the final frontier. Jon and Billy have been together for 11 years. They own a home together. They're raising children together. But they can't get married.
I can't imagine a more married couple than us. I mean, we have a real partnership. We divide up the jobs, and he takes care of the girls, and then I come home at night and I fix dinner. He gets them started with their homework because he's a little bit more patient than I am. And I sort of come down and lay down the law and dispense justice, and we go to bed.
There's a lot of popular support for the marriage equality movement. But many family organizations and religious groups have strongly opposed it. They say homosexuality can never be equal to heterosexuality. The idea goes against many religious teachings.
So right now the question before us, particularly in the state of New Jersey, is not one that says, do we allow homosexuals to have same-sex relationships? That's an absurd question. Of course, it's America, you're free to associate with whomever you'd like. The question before us now as a state and as a country is whether it's the same as marriage. My argument is sodomy is not sexual union. And because sexual union is the core definitive expression of marriage, if it's not the same, then without sexual union, you cannot marry. It's not possible to marry. Not that you're not allowed, it's not possible.
When you look at it, most people support marriage as remaining as the union of a man and a woman. And they also support a benefit structure. We've heard the court say, separate but equal. And that's what happened here in New Jersey. And
it's hard to find gay couples that agree. 3 years ago, when New Jersey passed its civil union law, Jon and Billy signed up. They didn't care what it was called. They just wanted the rights.
I think the higher priority is getting civil unions federally recognized so that we begin to get more of the benefits. What they call it is somewhat irrelevant to me as long as the net result is that I get the same thing everybody else gets.
And that's the problem. Activists say civil unions are basically second-class citizenship. There are no federal rights, like Social Security survivor benefits, or access to government programs. And partners get turned away at emergency rooms because hospital workers don't understand civil unions. Faith Baum and Sue Becker have been together for 25 years. They were one of the first openly gay couples living in Maplewood, and their 2 daughters were among the first children of gay parents in the township's public schools.
We have so much paperwork to back up our relationship that it is scary. We have wills, we have powers of attorney, we have proxies, we have domestic partnerships and civil unions, and none of it means anything because the only people who understand what it means are gay people. And unless you go into a hospital and meet a gay person who has the same stack of paperwork, they have absolutely no idea what it's about.
I remember Sue was in the hospital once right after Zoe was born. And we went to the emergency room, and I was freaking out, and the doctor finally goes, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm her partner." And he said, "What does that mean?" And things haven't come very far in the almost 20 years since that happened.
All the time, hospitals tell gay people, look, we're not letting you visit your loved one because you're not married. Employers are not giving equal benefits to same-sex couples who are in civil unions because you're not married. Society doesn't accept civil unions as marriage.
But many people say there's a reason for that. A reason that's bigger than politics or lawsuits. They say same-sex marriage would redefine marriage in a way that renders the institution meaningless.
There are fundamental and universal truths about marriage that transcend religion, they transcend culture, they transcend time. I'm the first one to fight for anyone's freedom to enter into marriage. But what I will stand against, what we stand against, is having to change the meaning of marriage in order for another to enter into, particularly without looking at the consequences that it may cause.
I think the state has a vested interest in keeping marriage as the union of a man and a woman because ideally it is, in a healthy marriage, the best Department of Health, Human Services, and Education and Welfare that exists. And we know for kids that come into a marriage, you know, they know who their mom, who their dad is. There's so many issues that play into marriage that we really redefine marriage at our peril.
And if we look back historically at marriage, it doesn't present such a lofty picture. The history of marriage is that marriage was a contract between two men, the groom and the father of the bride. Marriage has evolved over time, and I think what's most important is to support relationships that are marked by fidelity and commitment. A lifelong commitment of two people in relationship, and when that relationship is supported by law and by the church and by the larger community, everyone benefits.
Because once you move away from the culturally identified one man and one woman, then what would stop any individual saying, wait a minute, my sense of equality is I wish to marry 3 people. My sense of equality is I wish to marry somebody who's 14. You're trying to redefine that institution, and it would know no parameters then to the number or the age or the gender of people.
What comes to mind is the fact that there are people who don't want to live near us, who don't want to work with us, who don't want to have anything to do with our children. And they feel that way because we're Jews. That's not acceptable. So I should accept the fact that someone somewhere has a list of people who are okay to hate and a group of people who aren't okay to hate, and they get to pick from that list.
Supporters of marriage equality say it's a direct descendant of the civil rights struggle. But opponents take issue with the comparison, saying their right to religious freedom means they can't be forced to accept something that goes against their faith.
To call marriage a civil right, I think, is a misnomer. I don't think that any person really has a civil right to marriage. It's more of a privilege that's been provided for our society. Nobody has a civil right to a driver's license.
I'm not looking for gay marriage. I'm looking for marriage. No more, no less, no different. The same that everybody else has in the American dream.
What the civil union law has done is exposed a separate but unequal provision in our life in New Jersey. And anything we learned from the civil rights movement in the 50s and 60s, that separate is never equal.
But Damon Owens taps a pretty lofty source to explain why he thinks differently.
I look right to Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, who in his letter to that Birmingham jail, he wrote specifically about what constitutes a just law and what constitutes an unjust law. Because a just law must be followed and an unjust law must be fought against.